good morning, students. Happy Monday. As you all know, today's session is a virtual distant learning session, and I'm going to go over some of the activities that you're going to be learning in this module in this morning. Okay? Our topic for today's session is narrative essay. Narrative essay. Today's objective, you will learn to identify those elements in a narrative essay, distinguish the parts of a narrative essay, and learn how to organize and write a narrative essay. Because you're going to be writing a personal narrative essay. Now let's start with what's the definition? What comes to mind when you listen to the word narrative essay? A narrative essay topic. So right now, I want you to stop and think about a possible topic for a narrative essay. Try to remember something that you have lived that is exciting or maybe difficult or wonderful or frightening. Oh my God, something frightening that happened to you. When you have these adjectives or these verbs in mind, then you could start thinking about a possible topic for a narrative essay. So this is my question. Can that experience might be something exciting, again, difficult, wonderful, or frightening that may have happened to you, your family, or a friend, and maybe you were involved in this experience. Can this event or experience be developed into an interesting narrative essay? Think for a moment. Do you have an experience in your mind? Something that was exciting, difficult, or wonderful? Or maybe something frightening? If you have that experience in your mind, it may be something exciting, emocionante, difficult. We could say the word in Spanish, algo retante, no dificultoso, something difícil, ese adjetivo, but maybe challenging, retante. An experience that maybe could be wonderful, asombroso, hermoso, o frightening, algo que te atemorizó o te asustó. Can you identify that experience if you have that experience in mind? Now we're going to be learning how can I identify those elements that differentiate a story from a narrative essay. Now let's see. Short story es un cuento corto. A narrative essay, we already have studied our first week the parts of speech and parts of an essay. Así que ya tenemos en mente what's the structure of an essay. A story and an essay, they have different elements, different structures. Now let's see what does it require to start writing or reading or thinking about writing a short story. A short story requires you to use imagination, making up characters. So this is the first differentiate or differences we can identify and see when we're talking about a short story and a narrative essay. In a short story right here, it requires you to use your imagination, making up characters. Number two, they don't have a thesis statement. Remember that we already discussed last week what was a thesis statement. What was the structure of a thesis statement? Number three, you can use or you can write this short story in the first person, that is I, or the third person of the singular, he, she, or it. And the fourth one says you decide on the starting and the ending point of your story, and you place your readers wherever you want. I decide where do I want to start and end my point of this story. Now let's make a quick review. A short story requires imagination, making up characters. It doesn't have a thesis statement. I can write in the first person, I, yo, or the third person of the singular, he, she, it, él, ella, o eso, o esa, if it is a thing, and you decide on the starting and the ending point of your story. These were the elements of a short story, un cuento corto. Now let's see a narrative essay. The first difference that I can identify right here, it says rely on personal experiences and facts from real life. One of the first differentiation of a story and a narrative essay. In this case, a short story, I use imagination and I make up characters. But the difference of a narrative essay, I rely on my personal experiences or facts from my real life. Number two, they do have thesis statement. Narrative essays have thesis statement. The third difference is I write in the first person, yo o I. And an essay, as we already discussed, follows a structure. I have an introduction paragraph, a body or development, and a conclusion. And right here, one of the differences of a short story is that I decide if I'm going to start my point at the beginning or at the end of my story. Now let's see. Narrative. Narrative. Narrar. Contar. Like telling a story. And we already discussed the difference between a short story and a narrative essay. Now let's go part by part. Narrative. Narrative is to tell a story, but we already mentioned that we tell a real life experience, a personal experience. And what did I mention? It could be difficult, exciting, wonderful, or frightening. Have those adjectives in mind because at the end of this session, you are going to start writing. But by now, just identify which emotion or which topic or real life experience you would like to share with your professor and your classmates. Number one, another word for story is narrative, narrativo. Number two, it has the same basic form or structure as most of other academics' essay. And this is my favorite part because you can be creative. What to write about? What can I write about in a narrative essay? Write about your memories and real experiences. You could write about when you were in elementary school, or if you were on a vacation, if you had the opportunity to go on a trip abroad beyond Puerto Rico, etc. Memories from your childhood. Write in a concise way. Write to motivate, educate, or entertain the reader. And as we mentioned, write in the first person. That first person is I, yo. Explain the why of the story. ¿Por qué estoy escribiendo o por qué estoy contando esta historia? Explain the why of this story. This is important for you. Why is this memory important for you? Why is this real experience important for you? Why do you want to motivate the audience, educate, or entertain the reader? Think about your why and explain why is it useful for others. Right here, I added a link. Let's see if we can open it. Okay. Right here, I added a link below so you could read more about which type of essays, and especially a narrative essay, you can write about. Now let's see. I know a short story and a narrative essay have differences, but when I write about a real or personal experience, I have to use the elements of a short story because I'm telling you an experience, and this experience may be, or it might be exciting, difficult, frightening, or something motivating, wonderful. So have in mind that you have to write in your essay the setting. This is the location or the place where the experience, the real experience, real life experience, or memory took place. The setting is the location or place where the action of the story occurs. Number two, we have the theme. The theme is the basic idea of the story. The theme will deal with a topic that is common in life and can include topics like greed, envy, love, and independence, among any others. Let's continue with the elements of the short story. We have the mood. The mood of the story is the feeling or atmosphere that the writer creates for the story. This could be happy, scary, sad, or full of suspense. Remember, when I started the class, I wanted you to think about an experience if it was exciting, difficult, wonderful, or frightening. This has to do with the mood, the feeling of my story, the feeling of the experience that I am going to share with you or with the reader. Characters. These are the people in the story. But remember, because we're talking about a narrative essay, something that I lived or someone in my family or friends, a real life experience, my characters are not imaginary. As in a short story, remember that we already discussed the differences between a short story and a narrative essay. In my real life experience, these people are alive. They are affected by the mood of the story and react to the events in which they are involved. What's the plot? The plot of my story or my real life experience, it's in essence the story. What happens in the story? What's the sequence of events? The plot often includes the climax or turning point at which the characters or events change. Now let's see. How can I organize and start writing a narrative essay? An essay, we already mentioned that it has the structure of a basic essay. We have introduction, body, and conclusion. The introduction is where my story begins. It's where my real experience life I am going to share with you, and this is the starting point. Here, you describe the setting, you introduce the characters, and prepare the audience for the action. The introduction always has a hook and a thesis. Remember, we already discussed what was a hook and a thesis last week in class. But a narrative hook helps us set the situation for the story. It helps the reader start guessing what will happen next. The thesis statement states the main idea of this essay and tells what the organization of the information will be. In a narrative essay, it introduces the action that begins in the first paragraph of the essay. Now let's go with paragraph number 2 and 3. This is the body or development of my narrative essay. It contains most of the plots of the story. It has to be organized in many different ways, in chronological order. Because remember, you're telling a story, a sequence of events that are going to be narrated in the order in which they occurred. In this case, each paragraph ends with a transitional sentence. Profe, what is a transitional sentence? It's a sentence where you give to your story a unity and allows the reader to follow easily. This transitional sentence must connect the previous paragraph with the next paragraph that the reader is going to read. And finally, we have the conclusion paragraph. Here, you finish describing the action in the essay. It can tell the moral or the lesson of the story, or it can make a prediction or a revelation about the future actions that will happen as a result of the events of the story. Now let's see. Let's do a little bit of a recap because I want you, in this class, in this session to remember that we're discussing the differences between a short story and a narrative essay. And you're going to write, I'm going to give you a worksheet to write about a memory, an experience, a real life experience. And then tomorrow in class, we will share this presentation, each one of you. Now let's see. Writing a narrative essay. We mentioned that in the introduction, the story begins. I have a theme, a setting, and my characters. What is the basic idea of the story? Where does the story take place? When does the story take place? This is a difference. Where, donde, y cuándo, when does the story take place? And who is in the story? ¿Quién está en esta experiencia? The middle of the story, we have the body. This could be paragraph number 2 and number 3. You mentioned the mood and the plot. What feeling or atmosphere do you want to create in your story? What will happen in your story? Then, in paragraph 4 and 5, the conclusion, the end of the story. It's the end of the action, of the moral or prediction or revelation. What will happen last in your story? How will you wrap up the action of the story? Will your narrative essay have a moral, make a prediction, or provide a revelation? This is the worksheet that you're going to be filling up. It says, what's your story? The topic, my most memorable day. Let me stop right there. I mentioned that we have the difference between a short story and a narrative essay. I have to think about a real life experience, something exciting, difficult, or challenging, or wonderful, or frightening. Now have those adjectives in mind. My most memorable day. El día más memorable de mi vida puede haber sido something exciting, emocionante, difficult, retante, wonderful, maravilloso, frightening, asombroso, un poco temeroso. But I want you to think about my most memorable day. Este día tan significativo en mi vida que yo nunca lo voy a olvidar. My most memorable day. Now let's see. Instruction says, write a story using the prompt below. Be sure to use effective narrative techniques, relevant descriptive details, and a well-structured sequence of events. This is the worksheet, but right here, previously, I gave you the structure. Here are the structures of your paragraph. Paragraph number 1, I have my theme, my setting, my characters. I share the basic idea. Where does the story take place? When does the story take place? And who is in the story? Introduction. This could be paragraph number 1 and number 2. Paragraph number 3 and 4, it's the middle of the story. What's the mood? What's the plot? What's the feeling or atmosphere that I want to share in my story? And what will happen? Remember, aquí yo no tengo el final porque estoy preparando a la persona para leer el próximo párrafo que es el final de mi experiencia. And finally, in the conclusion paragraph, these could be paragraph number 5 or 6. It's the end of the action, of the experience. What will happen in my story? In this paragraph, I am concluding the sharing of my narrative personal experience. How will I wrap up the actions of the story? And does it have a moral, make a prediction, or provide a revelation? Así que utilizando, me parece que los 4 previos slides where we discuss the elements of a short story, where we discuss the structure of a narrative essay, I want you to have that in mind because you're going to fill out this worksheet. ¿Ok? Voy a añadir esta hoja de práctica, este worksheet, en el módulo de asignaciones, and you're going to fill it out, okay? You're going to fill it out, and it says, think about a day you will never forget. Piensa en un día que nunca vas a olvidar. Write about what happened. Comienza a escribir qué sucedió. Who was involved? ¿Quién estuvo envuelto en esta situación? And where it took place. ¿Dónde se llevó a cabo? ¿Dónde fue que se dio esta experiencia? Este día inolvidable. Make sure to capture what made that day so memorable. Memorable. ¿Qué fue lo que sucedió en ese día? Maybe it could be again exciting, emocionante, retante, dificultoso o difficult. Wonderful, asombroso, or frightening, un poco de temor o atemorizado o que lo asustó, que usted nunca se va a olvidar de ese día. Así que usted va a utilizar esta hojita de práctica para comenzar a llenar párrafo de introducción, párrafo de desarrollo y de conclusión usando las técnicas ya que hemos discutido, the narrative essay, the structure, and some guided questions. Una vez usted termine de llenar esta información, usted la va a someter. No se preocupe que todas las instrucciones claras las vas a tener en la parte de módulos, donde dice Class Number 5 Narrative Essay. No te preocupes, todas las instrucciones van a estar ahí. Usted lo que tiene que hacer es utilizar este worksheet, esta hoja de práctica, llenar la información, and then prepare a PowerPoint presentation because tomorrow our first activity in class is everyone is going to share my most memorable day. Una vez yo llene esta información, preparo la presentación oral que voy a dar mañana en clase. Esta va a ser nuestra primera actividad en clase. Cada uno va a ofrecer su PowerPoint presentation hablándonos acerca de ese día memorable en su vida. Okay, so we're finishing this session. Let's do a recap. We started talking about A narrative essay. What was the structure of a narrative essay? What was the difference between a short story and a narrative essay? We mentioned the basic elements of a story, porque para narrar una experiencia vivida que es real, sí debo utilizar los elementos de un cuento. Siempre hay que pensar en el theme, the setting, the characters, the mood, the plot, etc. And the order or sequence of events because I'm telling an experience that I already lived and I want to share this with someone. We also mentioned what is the structure of a narrative essay, some guided questions to use in my worksheet. And to finish this session, you are going to go to Blackboard. You're going to go, let's go quickly to Blackboard and stop sharing right here. Okay. Okay. Let me share. Perfect. This is the worksheet that you're going to be filling out as a guided worksheet for your presentation tomorrow. Let me zoom it. Okay. Así que mencionamos, esta es la hoja de práctica that you're going to be filling out. La puedes llenar a mano, la puedes llenar a computadora, as you prefer, okay? But I want you to think, this is a topic, my most memorable day. Write a story using this prompt. Este es el prompt, el título. My most memorable day. El día más memorable de mi vida. Think about a day you will never forget. Write about what happened, who was involved, and where it took place, and make sure to capture what made that day so memorable. Una vez usted termine de llenar esta hojita con toda esta información y de escribir, you're going to prepare a PowerPoint presentation. Ahí puedes incluir fotos o un collage. Because remember, you're the person, usted es quien va a contar la experiencia mañana en frente de, ¿verdad? De sus compañeros cuando estemos todos en clases. We're going to start our session tomorrow sharing what was your most memorable day. Así que luego de llenar esta hojita, usted practicar todo en inglés. Si deseas, puedes preparar la presentación de PowerPoint. No te preocupes, que todas las instrucciones las voy a añadir ya mismito en el Blackboard, en el módulo Class Number 5, Narrative Essay. Okay? So let's go quickly. Let's see if I can find right here in this folder is where you're going to be submitting the worksheet. Remember, esta es la hojita de práctica. You're going to fill it out. La vas a llenar. It could be in computer or si va a escribir, por favor, que sea legible, que yo pueda entender lo que usted escribió. And then you're going to submit it in Blackboard. En la parte de assignments, vamos aquí. To your left hand, go to assignments. Once you press assignments, you're going to find task of unit number 2, narrative essay. Well, students, that's all for this session. Remember, if you have any questions or doubts, you can write me, okay? So have a good one. God bless you. Bye-bye.